There we go. Okay, so my name is Madie Donovan. I am the VP of Public and Executive Affairs at Planned Parenthood of Central and Western New York. We have some other Planned Parenthood representatives with us tonight. My colleague Sarah Connor is with us, and presenting tonight will be Lauren Berger from Restore, which is a program of Planned Parenthood, and also Madie G with Willow. So thank you so much for being here with us. Also, we have some other Planned Parenthood folks on the call here, and we're so glad that you've joined us as well. So to begin this evening, I am just going to level set and kind of give a brief overview of what's been happening at the national level and also at the local level here. So I'm going to just quickly jump back to 1973 and talk about Roe v. Wade, which is one of the most well-known Supreme Court cases. As you know, it protected the right to abortion in all 50 states, and it made abortion services safer and more accessible throughout the country. This decision also set a legal precedent that affected dozens of subsequent Supreme Court cases until the Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization decision, which overturned nearly 50 years of precedent and eliminated the federal constitutional protection for abortion. So you're probably also aware that in September, a federal ban that would limit abortion after 15 weeks was introduced. And while that bill is not expected to receive a vote in either chamber in the current Congress, it's a clear demonstration of what's at stake for abortion rights. And this ban is part of an extreme agenda that has been playing out across the country as states are actively implementing their own criminal abortion bans and seeking new ways to limit care, including ways to limit the right of their citizens to travel out of state for care. So as federal legislation, this ban would override state regulations of abortion. Again, this bill is not expected to receive a vote, but it's a clear indication of what's at stake here. And bans like this are already the reality for many states. Here in New York, we're very lucky. Abortion remains legal. The right to access abortion is protected and has been protected in New York State since 1970. It was strengthened in 2019 with the passage of New York's Reproductive Health Act, and our doors are open and we continue to provide essential sexual and reproductive health care in the communities we serve. And as we start to see bans across the country, we are seeing more patients from out of state travel to our affiliate to receive care. And we are continually working to expand access. As you probably know, we moved our health center in Buffalo in order to expand our capacity for family planning services and to see patients. We have expanded our hours in Syracuse. We are looking to move to an expanded facility in Henrietta to serve our Rochester area. And we are continuing to see patients via telehealth. So we're doing everything we can to meet the moment. So far, since the overturn of Roe v. Wade, we have seen patients from as far as Florida and Texas, and especially in our Western clinics in West Seneca and Buffalo, we are seeing many patients from Pennsylvania and Ohio. So we're doing all we can to meet that need, and our doors remain open to provide that essential healthcare to the communities we serve. And with that, I will turn things over to Lauren and Madie, and I will just bring up the PowerPoint presentation quickly.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lauren Berger, and I'm the training coordinator with Restore Sexual Assault Services. I'll let my co-presenter introduce themselves.
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Madie. I am a counselor at Willow Domestic Violence Center.
And so we put together a couple of slides that just sort of present the issue of both domestic violence and reproductive coercion, as well as some information about our programs and what
Yeah. So I'll start us off just telling you guys a little bit about Willow. I'm sure if you're from the Rochester area, you may have heard about us. We were formerly Alternatives for Battered Women, as that might be remembered. That wasn't as inclusive as our services are, and as an inclusive of a name as our services are. So we switched to Willow to be more inclusive. So our mission is to prevent domestic violence and ensure every survivor has access to services and supports that they need. All of our services are free and confidential, and each year we provide over 8,000 clients and reach another 12,000 through prevention education throughout the greater Rochester area.
And I mentioned my title is training coordinator for Restore Sexual Assault Services, and that's typically how folks know us, because we are the rape crisis program designated by the New York State Department of Health in 5 counties. And there's a little inset of a map of New York State, as part of New York State, showing the 5 counties of coverage that we offer. And most folks on this call may be from the Rochester area, which is in Monroe County. And so in all 5 of those counties, we function as the rape crisis program. But in one of those 5 counties, which is Wyoming, which is in sort of the bottom left-hand corner of this map, the counties highlighted in red. In that county, we are actually the dual program, where we serve survivors who are both impacted by sexual violence and domestic violence. And so I did put a little graphic of a little cow, because Wyoming County is a fairly rural place, and they are pretty proud of the fact that per capita they do have more cows than people. And I have an insight of Letcher State Park, because it's one of the notable things in the area for folks that may not get a chance to get out to Wyoming County very much. And it's a beautiful time of year to go there. So some of the services that Restore offers, which Willow does as well in Rochester, to serve the greater Rochester area and community, is providing like court advocacy and accompaniment, helping survivors file for like orders of protection, or like what we might call a restraining order, as well as helping in like custody, visitation, like all those different processes through the justice system and the legal system, as well as providing that emotional support and counseling and safety planning for survivors and their families. And Restore has a couple of different staff members that specifically do those things, like a legal team. And Willow as well provides outreach and education. And whereas Restore, we provide outreach and education for sexual violence, which might be resources and consent, and what some folks can say to help a friend who's been impacted by sexual assault in all 5 counties. In Wyoming County, we're also providing education in both primary schools and at any college institutions or community spaces that invite us in to talk about healthy and unhealthy relationships, dynamics of domestic violence, and how to support those who might be impacted by intimate partner violence and others people's lives as well. So we've, in the reporting period between October of 2020 through 2021, we saw about 500 clients, and included in those 500 clients was supporting an additional almost 700 children, which for a county that is fairly rural, their population is, I believe, under 40,000, was pretty notable. And our number of clients has gone up every year since Restore was given this program in 2015. And we're also providing education in either every school district is either having education already scheduled, already done, or is planning with us to come into their school districts to talk with students about those things. So a lot rocking and rolling down in Wyoming County for domestic.
So to go along with our topic of abortion and the intersection of domestic violence, we're going to start off talking about domestic violence and reproductive control. So what we know about domestic violence overall is that it occurs across genders, sexual orientation, cultures, and classes. There is not a stone unturned in that area of who we reach out to, who reaches out to us. And we also know that a huge part, one of the main parts of domestic violence, is that need for power and control from the abusive person in the relationship. And I'm sure if you are familiar with domestic violence, if you are on the lookout for resources throughout October, you'll see the power and control wheel. And that really, it encompasses all of the different tactics that we see abusers use as tactics to obtain power and control. So whether it's sexual abuse, emotional abuse, economic abuse, or physical abuse, most of the time it's a little bit of everything, but those things are what we really look for when working with clients, and that's how we use a power and control assessment essentially, and that's how we determine if they're fit for our services. In terms of reproductive control, it's something that is very apparent, especially within new legislations, and I'm sure outside of New York State, it is even more of a hot topic within DV organizations. But what we know is that during pregnancy, that is one of the most dangerous times in a domestic violence relationship. And it really is on either end of the spectrum, whether they are trying to convince a partner to have their child as a means of control, or convincing their partner to terminate the pregnancy. So it is really a lot of coercion and coercive behaviors, and that really works into a lot of other things that we're going to talk about. But some of the ways that reproductive control might come into play are not allowing resources, whether it's financially or just the knowledge of things like Planned Parenthood or clinics and different resources like Restore around the counties from the abuser, and kind of holding that information from the survivor, or to either have withholding birth control, or, and this is probably tying into a lot of different other things we'll talk about as well, or using threats or stalking behavior to really withhold and continue that control. So if the abuser is using stalking behavior, they might be following their partner and seeing that they're going to clinics, or that they are going to pick up prenatal vitamins, or they are going to pick up prescriptions that are relating to the pregnancy that the abuser might not want. So there's a lot of different aspects of control, all the way from sexual abuse to physical abuse. There also is the big question, and I don't have the answer to this. It's just kind of a question I'm going to leave you with to sit with throughout the rest of the presentation, is the question of if there is ever consensual sex in an abusive relationship, because so often sex is used as a coping mechanism to keep things at bay, or to calm the violence, or to please their partner and give that control. So they, as a safety plan essentially, of saying, okay, if I allow them this, I'm not going to be harmed in a different way. So that can also lead to an unwanted pregnancy. And a lot of times we think that, okay, and I say we as a society, we might think that, okay, sex in this relationship can be consensual, but it is a big question of if it is used as a means of power and control. When we're looking from the outside in, is that consent? We can move to the next slide. So this is a little bit about that reproductive coercion that I mentioned earlier, and whether it's pressure to start or stop, and change methods of birth control. I personally have had clients who their abuser has hid their birth control, flushed it, done things like that to ensure pregnancy. I've also had clients report physical means towards them to try and terminate the pregnancy, whether it's physically abuse, or whether it's putting things in their food, their drinks, etc. So really working in that word of coercion, of not giving these survivors a choice of whether that is okay. And Lauren, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think, and you bring up a great question with regard to, when someone's in a relationship where their partner has this power and control over them and doesn't necessarily have a say in their own choices with regard to sexual contact. is there ever a context where somebody can consent? And that's a good question. And I also was thinking about situations where survivors, like an abuser's behavior might change when someone's pregnant, and that almost like when you bring up that concept of someone, knowing that the dynamics of their abuse will shift if their circumstances change. So if they do opt to carry a pregnancy, that may have some aspect of like relenting on like physical abuse during the pregnancy for some relationships, and somebody might choose to carry pregnancy only for that reason. And so that it can result in survivors making these choices, but in a way it's not necessarily them making the choice freely, because it's within this context of power and control.
Yeah, it's a means of a safety plan rather than a means of choice. Yeah, absolutely.
And I wanted to include stealthing on this slide, so because it's a specific practice where somebody will remove a condom during intercourse and just like not inform their partner that that's happening. And so this person believes that a condom is being used to try and prevent pregnancy and STIs during the intercourse, except the partner knowingly removes it and does not inform their partner. And that occurs often enough that it's become an actual phrase, and that's what that stealthing is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you feel like we can go to the next slide? Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
There's also a bunch of different like systems that survivors navigate when they are seeking more support for themselves, especially if that comes through things like divorce, through things like establishing custody, through things like establishing an order of protection. So, a partner who's been abusive can no longer, come to their home, to their place of work, these sorts of things. Lots of survivors might seek these means of safety for themselves and their families. And it can a lot of times feel a lot like a maze, which is where that image came from, is just this idea that they're sort of trying to navigate all these legalese and all these appointments and all this like very business looking building, feeling like really overwhelmed and like this is all really, really difficult. It can be really helpful to have advocates, by the side of a survivor to both emotionally support them, work with them through planning to stay safe, and like actually helping, with paperwork and, being with them through the phases of any kind of legal processes. But at the end of the day, the survivor is the one doing those things, and it can be really, really emotionally difficult, and it takes a lot of time, so having to go to the courthouse now that not everybody is continuing to allow the virtual filing of orders of protection like they were during the pandemic. Some folks are now needing to reappear like in person at the courthouse, and that can take several hours while they're waiting for kind of a petition to be heard. And so that is often just a very difficult process, even for a survivor to seek out for themselves. But when a partner who is abusive or an ex who's abusive decides to use that system as a vehicle to continue to make the survivor's life difficult, it offers up a lot of chances for the person to do that. Things like, not allowing an uncontested divorce, and kind of meaning that the divorce must move through the different phases of the system and go through a bunch of different proceedings and hearings, taking up more time. Often if a survivor doesn't have the ability to access free legal support, they may opt for a private attorney, which also of course costs money, as well as if there are children either with the abusive partner or other children, who's taking care of them during this time, all of that arrangement, all those different things can be really difficult. And sometimes abusers can use, seeking the need for a parent who's bearing the child to provide proof of paternity and making that drag out and being uncooperative with those hearings and processes, not showing up, those sorts of things, as well as seeking child support for just material assistance with the cost of raising a child, which, as anyone who has tried to raise a child will know, is very expensive. I'm only an aunt at this point, but I happen to know it's quite expensive even to be an aunt sometimes. And so sometimes seeking support can be really difficult too. There are programs where a survivor can make their address anonymous, because usually for support court, a survivor would have to provide their address, which of course, if they want the abuser to not know where they live, sort of presents a real barrier. And there are programs, again, that disguise that address, but again, it's one more step that survivor must first know about, and then navigate. So it can be a real difficult, long, arduous process for survivors. And then of course, if there are children with the abusive partner, unfortunately, a lot of times, and I'm sure Madie has seen this with folks that you've worked with too, children are used by abusive partners, both as targets of the abuse themselves. I mean, we all know that being present in a home where there's domestic violence, even if it's not directed at the children, is obviously damaging for the children. But it's not uncommon for abusive partners to actually, again, target physical, emotional, sometimes sexual, abuse toward the children as a target, either to abuse the children in their own right, or specifically to hurt the parent that they're also abusing the other parent. Or if an abuser has lots of time that they spend with the children, they may try to alienate the survivor and sort of turn the children against the parent who's the survivor, who's breaking away from the abusive parent. And then if there are children, again, with existing custody or visitation schedules, disruptions to those, constant efforts to try and change those. And each one of those comes with, court hearings and paperwork filings. And again, more time, more arrangement, more, away from work, those sorts of things. And so a lot of times it's possible, for an abusive partner to continue the fact that the person they've harmed has to continue to deal with these things, even though they may be well beyond, still being in the relationship. This person may be, has left the relationship years ago, and so even though that distance has existed, this person may still be able to, seek out that contact and make these demands of their time and their emotional energy through these court systems. And that can be really debilitating. And so I think when we shift kind of from defining what all the problems are with all these things is to then what do we do about those things? Well, first of all, a lot of folks already are doing something about it by being on this call and listening to folks talk about these issues and to just learn that this is happening. So that can, when I'm thinking about talking about it, it can be a couple of different ways. You can talk about it just with your friends. Maybe this is, just coming up in casual conversation around, the relationship dynamics that you might have with your own close friends or with your loved ones or even with your partner. And, there might be things that you can share as far as raising awareness, like in a more public setting on your social media, with that wider group of folks, maybe not just your close friends, but also your wider, social circle on Facebook or Instagram or wherever folks are these days. If you're looking for more things, there's a lot of different existing programs, both who are, creating content. This graphic comes from the National Network to End Domestic Violence, and they're promoting actually the week after next, which is the DVAM, or Domestic Violence Awareness Month, week of action, where each day there's a prompt and this national program is promoting each one of those different things that day. So you could share those things. Or if you're feeling like, called to do a little bit more and you're able to volunteer, that might be a really great option for you or to suggest to a loved one. I know that Willow provides volunteer opportunities. Restore has volunteer opportunities, actually having another training coming up right in November. And Planned Parenthood of Central Western New York also has different volunteer opportunities across our region. And so there's, different strengths that folks might have or different interests that you might have. Lots of different programs exist to be able to fill those different niches. And maybe you're not able to extend yourself to volunteer right now, but maybe it would be a great idea for Willow to come present at your office. You've got like a lunch and learn you can plan for next month or something like that. That might be a way that you can volunteer, the time and effort to spread awareness and share information about the different things that people can not only learn about themselves, but different resources they might be able to share to help someone. And that brings me to that last one is one of the things we can do is to know where we can go if either ourselves or, a friend or a loved one might need to turn to somebody for more help.
Yeah, and I want to add on top of all of those great ways to really take action is donations can be really helpful as well. A lot of us are probably bringing out all of our cooler clothes now, and some might fit and some might not. So looking at different websites to see if they are still accepting donations. As of right now, I'm 99% sure we still are at Willow. Sometimes we cut it off because the Rochester community is so generous that we don't have space for it. But we have a warehouse in our shelter that is accessible for all of our clients. So if it's a winter jacket, socks, bras, underwear, t-shirts, long sleeve shirts, winter boots, things like that. And then coming spring cleaning, same thing, different shoes, t-shirts like that. A little goes a long way, bath products, just to know that even that little thing can really go a long way. And we have on our Willow website, there's a donation tab and there is an email for our Willow wish list as well. Yeah, so here are some really great resources. I'll go over the domestic violence ones, and then if Lauren wants to share the reproductive health ones. So we have us at Willow. As Lauren was mentioning, we have our court advocacy program. We have a shelter. Our shelter is always full, but that doesn't mean we're not going to do what we can to support clients. So we have in the past put clients in hotels if needed, connected with DHS to see what can happen to ensure safety of our clients. And then our court advocates allowing for assistance and orders of protection. We now have a mobile counselor who is at shelter and at the Hall of Justice 1 day a week to sit in and see if there are clients who need support. And she is mobile, as her title implies, and she can go to the court if needed on days that she's not designated to be there. So they're right there in the Hall of Justice, 3rd floor. You can find them. And then there's Restore, which is really helpful for a lot of our clients. And then something for those of you who are interested in learning more, domesticshelters.org has a lot of really great in-services. They have articles. They have just a lot of really great information. One of the books that we have had a lot of clients find helpful is Why Does He Do That? By Lundy Bancroft. And it's a heteronormative approach of looking at DV, but a lot of clients find that helpful to know that different aspect. And he did a presentation with domesticshelters.org. So there's a lot of really cool in-services that could be helpful for learning more about DV throughout the year. So feel free to check those things out.
I can jump in for this next portion here. Back a slide. For the reproductive health portion, the resources we have listed here, not a comprehensive list by any means. There are so many resources out there, but the first one is our website for Planned Parenthood of Central and Western New York, so you can see what services we have available, where our locations are, and much more great information. The next one is abortionfinder.org. This is a really, really important resource now more than ever. They list only verified abortion providers across the country. So we like to remind people that if you just type into a Google search, abortion clinics near me, you will have crisis pregnancy centers, AKA fake clinics, that show up in your search results. These are places that try to mislead you, convince you not to have an abortion. So Abortion Finder is a trusted resource to find where you can get an abortion in your area, and they can help you through that process. So that is a resource that we always like to share with folks. The next is the New York Abortion Access Fund. This is another great place to donate to if that's something you're looking to do as a way to get involved. They provide funds for abortion procedures themselves and also costs associated with abortions. So, you know, travel expenses, hotels, anything like that. And that resource is available for residents of New York State and people coming from out of state to New York for care. The next one is Exposed Fate Clinics RAC. That's a website local to the Rochester area where folks can help identify where those crisis pregnancy centers or fate clinics are so that there is more public awareness of those places. So if people are wanting an abortion, they know that they should avoid those places. So those are just some great resources to keep in your back pocket, and there are many, many more. You can go to the next slide.
This one, I just pulled together a couple of things about what Restore is doing for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, which is October, which is right now. So happy DVAM. And so in the last several years, we've grown from 1 flag display to up to 3, possibly 4 before the end of the month. We'll see what's going on throughout the different communities in Wyoming County. So each of these pictures are from the different displays that we did as late as this past Monday. 2 in the village of Warsaw, which is the Wyoming County seat at both the government center and the Department of Social Services building. And then the 3rd is in the village of Perry. So those are some of the things that we do, as well as sharing both like content about like flag displays and some information like from state and national programs as far as statistics on domestic violence throughout the month, as well as special events like tonight, Take Action Night, and next week we'll be presenting at the Wyoming County Board of Supervisors meeting.
Awesome. Yes. So for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, Willow is really jumping in, and we have our walk with Willow on Saturday, October 15th. So not this Saturday, but the following Saturday. You can create a team. You can do a lot of different ways to participate. And registration begins at 9. The walk begins at 10. So it starts at our Stories of Strength mural, which is at the Times Square building. And if you've been in Rochester recently, if you have seen pictures of it, it is a gorgeous mural that was painted by Sarah Rutherford, who is now one of our employees to really collaborate with art and survivors and really use that as a tool to spread the word about DV. And this is where we're starting the walk. And something really cool about this piece of artwork is that it's interactive. So it's called the Stories of Strength mural because when you go to it, you can hold your phone up to the mural, and there are QR code feels like the right word. It probably isn't because I'm not techie enough, but there's something similar to a QR code where if you hold it up to the painting, you can click on a link and it will share stories of strength from survivors in the Rochester area. And Sarah is working on a lot of other great collaborations with a grant from New York State to work with Willow. We also will have our Willow Summit the following week during National Domestic Violence Awareness Week. And that has a bunch of in-services, and that is on our website as well. It's right as you click on it, it'll say Willow Summit. We, as well as Restore, do the flag displays. I am in the counseling center and not prevention ed, but I know we do the flag displays, and I'm 99% sure that they will be in front of our Strong Talent building on East Ave. That's where they usually are. And you can check out our social media for things like that.
And this brings us to the final slide, which just thanks folks for spending some time with us, as well as the contact information for Willow, Restore, as well as Planned Parenthood of Central and Western New York, our websites, our hotline numbers, as well as social media handles where you can learn more and check out what we're doing all year long.
And if we want to stop recording so we can move into some questions, If anybody has any questions that they want to ask or thoughts that they want to share, you can feel free to put them into the chat or unmute yourself